Welcome to the Continuing Education module on getting the most from your coaching process, assuring behavior change. Our agenda for this module includes looking at coaching in some context around other interventions in our wellness activities, providing a rationale for telephone-based coaching as a primary tool and intervention activity for most populations, talking about some of the coaching challenges and the challenges of carrying out and conducting coaching activities, looking at some of the possible potential applications for coaching, looking at some of the technical considerations, looking at how to evaluate our coaching activities, and then looking at a series of strategies for getting the most from your coaching activity. And then we'll summarize with some key points. Where coaching fits in the context of our technology infrastructure, of the program, the virtual program components, these all are part of what we consider as part of that reusable, robust technology infrastructure that's designed to disseminate wellness to all of a employee population that's involved. And we're focusing on the telephone coaching portion of that. And if you notice the relationship here, the ability for an employee up in the left to complete a health risk assessment or well-being assessment, to have it processed, to produce a personal report on demand that the individual can use that contains some suggestions or advice, and then to potentially have triggers or protocols or filters that would essentially identify who might receive a telephone coaching contact after the completion of that well-being assessment or HRA. That may include referrals, so our coaching activity may help people find their way to specific types of vendors or providers. So we use that opportunity as well as part of a coaching intervention. So the idea that the coaching intervention really is driven by information which is collected as part of either a single survey during the year or multiple surveys. And that second approach is oftentimes called a DRIP HRA or a DRIP well-being assessment. And then there are offers that come with that, and then a personal report that can also be used. So that telephonic coaching would in fact be a piece that helps the individual put some of the findings and the feedback from this process into some sort of perspective for that individual. And then we have the other pieces that you're familiar with from past activities that include the WellCert program, where we're looking at welcome kits, things we send people on an annual basis, the ability to have either online or paper-based self-directed change materials, the ability to have email and mail messaging periodically, the ability to have some crafted and some customized wellness newsletters, and the ability for you to have a summary that can be shared with a primary care practitioner. And then an e-health portal that basically provides several different kinds of functions for the individual. And then we wrap that up with some incentives that essentially guide the use of these services and how they fit with other activities within the wellness program. So the context we're looking at here is connecting coaching to the flow of personal information and then building that in a way that helps the individual and makes sense for the health improvement, risk mitigation, and economic return. Now, our rationale for telephone-based coaching, there are vendors that do face-to-face coaching where they place individuals in a worksite, and I believe that that can be an effective intervention in certain kinds of environments. But when we look at the approximately 150 million employees in the U.S., it does not, in my estimation, in my opinion, I don't think that the wellness coaching activity that is strictly face-to-face is likely to be an effective tool for the vast majority of employers. And I think that the telephone-based coaching with people that can be in their own homes, working through a computer system and a software system that allows them to connect with people at particular times where they set appointments. That's probably going to be one of the best ways of using coaching in a wellness program. So the rationale is that some coaching contact is likely to be needed to provide the reinforcement for behavior change, both the initial behavior change, but also the ability to help people maintain a behavior change. So there's a reinforcement value in that. There's also a face-to-face is better, but difficult to do. So we acknowledge that in terms of some of the ways in which coaching takes place. Passive approaches generally don't work very well in terms of habit formation. So if we are not helping people, understand the cues to their specific routine, understanding a healthier routine and having that healthier routine, and then having a reward attached to that, either an intrinsic or extrinsic reward, the passive approach that leaves out the follow-up, leaves out contact, it leaves out a connection or a relationship, is generally less effective than offering this kind of more active support for change. Proactivity is possible, so we can in fact have that lean in situation. We can have an opt-out recruitment strategy, which means that you're in until you say you don't want to be in. So we have the proactivity that being possible. We also have an infinite series of adaptions and personalizations that are possible. So we can do a lot with the computer-aided process of the coach and what information is used and utilized in that coaching encounter. So there's a great deal of adaptation and personalization that can be done. We also have specialization, bringing more improvement and more effectiveness over time. So as individual coaches become proficient at handling particular kinds of behavior issues, they end up getting more effective at being able to do that. So we can gain from the specialization to a much larger degree in that telephone-based approach to coaching. And it reduces the time demands for both the coach and the employee. So that's what I believe will end up being one of the primary reasons why this particular kind of modality or intervention modality is likely to stay around and develop a usefulness as we learn how to use it more effectively. And we also have the opportunity to have theory-based use of coaching. So we can have some proven scientific theory that we can then cast and put into our coaching activity, like motivational interviewing or consumer information theory. But looking at a trans-theoretical model, we can look at coaching as a platform to build more theory-based approaches to behavior change. And we also can connect it to other modalities. So our ability to have the coaching modality be lead, and then the ability to work with the individual around what other kinds of learning and behavioral reinforcement modalities can in fact be brought to bear. And we also have the opportunity to have more integration with on-site activities. So our ability to have a coach that has information about what is going to be carried out or conducted in terms of wellness activity in a particular work site. So again, these are what I believe are some of the major rationalizations for using a telephone-based approach to coaching as an adjunct to a wellness program. Now, the challenges to phone interventions are not immaterial. They're not trivial. We have situations where employees are relocating, so we may not have current information on them. Sometimes their numbers change, so they may, in fact, have a new cell phone or be changing their phone services. We also have caller ID, so people are oftentimes don't answer when they don't know who it is that's calling. They don't want to have the telemarketing, so the caller ID allows them to have the aversion to telemarketing, so they cannot answer the phone. So when we're doing cold calling around a coach trying to get in touch with a specific employee, You can in fact leave messages. Sometimes those messages are heard, or sometimes they're not. So there's a hit rate that we used to deal with in the organization that I was involved with, Sumex Health Management. We had a very large coaching component. So the ability for us to use the coaches to maximum advantage by having some ability to either leave messages and or call the individual at work and or email them to set up an appointment is usually something that can be done to increase the hit rates, the contact rates for a coach. We also have the issue of time zones. So sometimes our coaches are in another time zone, so they have to adjust to that in the process of setting up calls and being able to respond to individual calls. There's home versus work contact. There's the time of the day. There's the day of the week. Our experience in coaching was that Tuesday nights were one of the best hit rate times for cold calling or by coaches. So the ability to have that occur in terms of day of the week. There also are the incentive effects. So if you have linked it to a premium contribution differential, then there's more likelihood that there will be a higher hit rate, a higher contact rate coming out of the coaching process. And there's also the issue around getting agreement from people. So the ability for the coach to both understand and ask, and we're going to talk about a kind of a protocol for how you might structure a general coaching encounter, but getting agreement is also part of that challenge from the individual, particularly if there's either no incentive there and they're not particularly motivated to involve themselves in wellness. So that's another one of the challenges to phone interventions. And the full engagement issues of how do we in fact get them fully engaged in getting on the wellness bus and on focusing on a specific wellness issue, developing a goal that they want to work on related to wellness. Now, coaching as part of a risk stratification process, if you look at the issues that we've talked about in the past about risk stratification, we're generally looking at well-being assessments or well-being surveys, or health risk assessments, actually helping us stratify the population by some of these major kinds of categorizations. We then are working on incentives and communication to actually help people get to the resource that can help them. So if you look down in the bullets underneath the interventions, you will see that a number of these include the coaching kind of intervention. So coaching can in fact be a very useful part of this intervention. In addition, by the way, the ability for everyone to have at least one coaching call a year, and then the issues that are related to that individual, related to their interests, preferences, their desires, some of their risk issues, some of their readiness to change, all of those things can in fact be mediated by a coach. So we can actually use coaching to help people get to whatever the type of intervention is that's intended to help improve their health and well-being. Now, potential coaching applications are many. On the high risk side, the more severe kinds of risk can in fact be coached. So we are looking at all of those different kinds of high risk situations around a specific series of behaviors. The at-risk issues are additional ones, so high emergency room use could be one of those. If they're planning pregnancy or have a lifting risk in their job occupation, those are all different kinds of issues. Cumulative trauma disorder is the CTD pain risk. In the conditions, we have obviously lots more conditions. And these are often, again, found through some sort of health risk assessment, well-being assessment, and or preventive screening, and then can be managed and affected by a coach relationship around those areas. So the ability for us to collect information, identify what the likely issue is for the individual, sort out what they want to work on, and then be able to help them deal with that. That's part of the kind of the basic structure, if you will, of a coaching application. So there are many different types of potential coaching applications that we can look at in terms of worksite health. A general coaching protocol includes a number of common elements. First of all, we generally are dealing with people at home, and if we are not able to reach them, then we want to move to a work contact. Usually between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Selective weekend times if needed. Opt-out model, so you're in unless you choose to not use the service or the benefit. So that's an opt-out model. Individual plan ready. So that's the area where we are looking at the individual and their ability to have a plan about that activity or that contact. So if we're having difficulty getting to someone, we can then use email and use the census documents, which usually come from an employer that may contain the email address, work email address of the individual. Oftentimes we want to have a quick differentiation to kind of identify, well, we're calling, this is related to your wellness program. This is also related to your reduction in your premium for your health plan. This is part of that process. Is this a good time? Quick differentiation, quick identification, state the purpose of the call, why the call is taking place. Asking, by the way, if this is a good time to talk, or would they want to make an additional appointment where you can get back to them. Connection to past activity, so this is related to a past well-being assessment that was completed, or it's using the information from the 3 that they've completed, but connection to past activity. Ask again if it's okay to talk briefly. Establish some rapport with the individual. Ask a question or two that allows them to kind of state where they are on their issues around wellness. Listen to the response. Pose a feeler. So if, based on what you've said, would you be interested in formulating a goal around the wellness issue? And, what would that be? What's of the issues in your personal report from your well-being assessment, which of those resonates with you? So that's kind of some of the protocol issues in a contact between a wellness coach and someone who is being coached in terms of wellness and well-being. Supporting modalities that we oftentimes can use in coaching can be many. The most frequently used are these. So we can suggest that people download smartphone apps. We can suggest a book, either a Kindle book or a Amazon book or a audio book, but being able to help people, focus people on specific issues that would be, if they need motivation, then a more motivational, inspirational kind of book. If they need skills, then more information transfer and technical issues. And then also podcasts, the ability to go to websites so I can refer them to a specific website, providing short printed materials, providing self-directed change materials, providing video materials, oftentimes having YouTube videos, by the way, or referrals to individuals to specific types of healthcare providers. So these are probably the most typically used supporting modalities. It's important for us to know how the individual likes to learn and which of these is going to resonate more with them in terms of how they pursue improvement, change, and so on. Then the less frequently used are going to be conducting group programs in the worksite, community-based programming, providing a support group opportunity, providing a laboratory or biometric test or a home test, providing a mentor option, providing a health advice line, referral, providing a periodic newsletter or self-tests. And self-tests, I think, are underutilized. I think they need to be moved up to the top in terms of more frequently used, but being able to have some selected self-tests that the individual can take that helps he or she learn more about a specific issue, wellness and health issue that they have. That to be part of the A in the AMSO structure. So it's helping them with awareness by using self-tests to help them become both more aware, but also contributing some to the motivational aspects. So those are some of the supporting modalities that we potentially have in coaching that can enhance the coaching effect in terms of helping make long-term behavior change. Now, coaching technical considerations are these. There's the issue of the balance between facilitation and prescription. I basically believe that we should not all do facilitation or all do prescription, but the idea is finding out what the person needs. If they need strictly more facilitation, then that should be the mode the coach uses. If it is a situation where the person really needs some advice and some prescription or direction, then that's the issue that should be addressed. But that's part of what the coach needs to assess in that contact with the individual. We also want to be using as much theory that is proven scientific theory to be as possible in our coaching activities. So the ability for us to use the trans-theoretical model, to use the motivational interviewing, to use consumer information theory, to use the whole developing habit formation theory. There's a variety of different kinds of theory that we want to integrate into the technical side of coaching. We also, by the way, want to have people that already have gone through a known set of content, materials, and skill building around this. So that's oftentimes going to include things like motivational interviewing. There also is the call center location issue. Where is the individual? And does the individual have a supporting software program that can incorporate information about that individual and the employer that they work for? Then we want to look at what's that minimum education level that the coach is expressing. Is this person a degreed person? Do they have a coaching certificate? What level of activity was focused on in the coaching programs? There are many coaching programs around. So looking at the issues around that technical minimum education levels. The element of software support. So what kind of supporting activity is provided to the coach that would enable them to be more effective, and maybe coming up with information about what modalities, supporting modalities, the individual would like for behavior change. The physical environment issues, what is it, a quiet workspace? Are they in a call center where you can hear a bunch of people talking in the background? So that's a physical environment kind of thing. What ongoing training do the coaches get? Do they in fact have a way of strengthening their skills? Do they have some ongoing continuing education that helps them become more effective as a coach? Also, what kind of quality control is going on? Are calls listened to? Is there a supervisor who's coaching the coaches? Those are all kind of the technical issues around the quality of the coaching activity. Attempt rates have to do with what's the pattern or the protocol for the contact of individuals. And we used to call the attempt rates, that's our cold call attempting to get a hold of an individual. So what those rates look like. Hit rates in terms of connecting with individuals, average call times, call lengths, the continuity of caller with the individual. That's another issue that's a technical issue, and it's better to build a relationship with the individual through the telephonic coach, so the ability to have some continuity in that relationship. And then fulfillment cycles. If you are going to send people things, if you're going to refer them, if you're going to transfer, give them links, what's that fulfillment look like on those supporting modalities? how often and how frequently and how fast can we in fact give people the things that are going to help them go to the next stage. And satisfaction assessment. How do we do that in terms of our ability to ask the person, is this helpful to you? Is there anything that I could be doing that would be more helpful to you? And then some way of collecting that information and aggregating it so that we can continue to increase the value of the coaching interaction with the individual. The problem here with a lot of the technical considerations is that many coaching vendors simply just bolt up coaches and phones and the technology, don't do a lot to try to improve the quality of the encounter with the average coachee or the person who's being coached. So that's a major part of our problem. It's the same problem we've had with health risk assessments, where we've just, the vendors have essentially just bolted up these things, keep the same things in place, and not do much to improve them. So there has to be an active pursuit of improving the quality and utility of these coaching encounters if you are going to see coaching actually accomplish the kinds of things and produce the results that you want it to produce. And caller effectiveness. So the issues around how effective a specific caller is. And there is noted differences between different coaches as to how effective they are. So our ability to work on the ones that are effective, keep looking at why they're effective, and then transmitting that and helping others learn those things that are contributing to a greater effectiveness on the part of the coach. Evaluation strategies for coaching are many. First of all, performance standards are usually part of contracts. So there are some fairly standard performance contracts and performance standards that are used in our contracting for coaching activity. There's satisfaction surveys that can be used, both follow-up email as well as verbal or audio surveys. There's a health risk assessment, well-being assessment, cohort data, so we can kind of look at people that are being coached, look at their results last year, compare it to this year, and be able to see what the differences are. And then that can include things like health behavior change, health risk change, and health risk mitigation, readiness to changes, treatment status, symptom status, self-efficacy, proxy utilization measures. These are all different kinds of data that can be used as part of cohort analysis in the people who are coached versus those that are not coached. And overall wellness score changes. So any kind of indices that we have in our instruments and or overall wellness score can be used to also monitor this. And an annual evaluation survey. So we can use that with people who are coached, and we can ask them a series of questions. And that can be a link to an automated survey device, or it can be a mailed survey process, a paper-based process. So lots of different ways of being able to do that. And you can also use all of the above plus particular health and productivity management measures for the coached population versus the non-coached population. So we can look at issues of health plan utilization, sick leave absenteeism, workers' compensation experience, disability insurance costs, and presenteeism. So that would bring in the other health and productivity management issues around the coached population. And we can also perform claims analysis. So if we know our coaching population by their names, and we can then transfer that to the entity that does the claims analysis, we can in fact look at how have their claims varied under that particular health plan situation and or disability management or workers' compensation claims. Getting the most from coaching. Now let's look at some of the strategies. I'm going to suggest a number of strategies for you. First of all, I would use AMSO as a overarching construct that you look at coaching to and through in order to make sure that there's adequate awareness process, increasing in motivation issues, the issues around skill acquisition, and the opportunities to practice. So you bring AMSO formally into the kind of coaching content and coaching process that you've established. You can use an incentive. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we under the question and answer time. You can use at least one call per year as a requirement. So you can have everyone at least have one call a year with a wellness coach that allows them to talk over their well-being assessment results and to potentially formulate at least one goal for wellness for themselves for the year. In addition, you can have the issues around how opt-out recruitment strategies are used. So the ability for you to use that particular approach. You can use a personal goal setting. So you can have that process be part of what you are doing during the coaching encounter. You can use motivational interviewing. You can use relationship connections. So there are connections that come from relationships at work and or through an occupational health unit that the individual might have access to. So in addition to using the person of the individual identity of the coach in a relational way with the individual so that they develop a relationship with the individual over time. You can use multiple learning modalities, and that's where we talked about the supporting modalities. So you have the coaches be able to help people link up with and get those other ways of learning and reinforcing specific wellness activities. You can use and help the individual have a strong role in tracking. So we can build in more of our health management process measurement strategies so that the individual is involved in that process. We can also use regular reporting. So the issue around putting this all together and having the individual be in the ability to have a regular reporting. So that's another kind of approach. We can also use a focus on strategies. So we can look at the strategies around specific behavior change and specific skill acquisition. We can use social help. So we can link it back to social marketing and social media and being able to develop relationships that may be helpful in how the individual is able to reinforce and have the behavior reinforced. We can also use formal recognition process, so we can identify people that have been able to achieve various things and actually recognize them. And we can also use regular evaluation processes. So we can build those in to help give us feedback about how to enhance the coaching process over time. And we can also use a follow-up protocol to get back to the individual at a period of time, maybe 6 months or a year or 18 months down the way, and talk to them about how the process worked for them. So we can in fact have that follow-up reconnection refresher activity as part of our approach to coaching. So in summary, these are some of the major kinds of issues that you can use to get the most out of your wellness coaching process. Now let's have a summary of key points. HRAs and well-being assessments can identify candidates for telephone coaching. Telephone-based and face-to-face interventions are promising. There are commonalities to all coaching interventions. The more they are linked to other health management interventions, the more effective they will generally be. So when they stand alone, they aren't as effective as when we combine them with different modalities and interventions. Everyone can benefit from at least one call per year, and I think all of us could in fact benefit from one wellness coaching encounter per year at minimum. There are differences to high risk, at risk, and condition uses of coaching interventions. So there are differences among those 3 different types of reasons for employing and using wellness coaching. There are a variety of strategies that can help maximize the utility of coaching interventions in health management programming. And telephone-based and face-to-face interventions need to be evaluated on an ongoing basis. So these are what I would consider to be some of the key points, takeaway points from this particular module, continuing education module, on getting the most from your coaching activity. And coaching will likely be around over the long haul. So our ability to look at coaching as a major kind of intervention for people around behavior change, it's not likely to change much over time. I think our use of coaching will increase in its sophistication and our understanding of when it works best and under what conditions it works best. But I think that basically the function of coaching is something that is likely to be a long-term intervention for us in the area of wellness and well-being. Now let's answer some key questions. First of all, the question is, how aggressive should we be with our coaching process? And I think there's different opinions in the field of wellness about how to use coaching. I tend to be more bullish on the use of coaching in terms of being aggressive. And I would suggest that you get more results if you are using an opt-out methodology, a recruitment methodology, which means they're in until they opt out. You leave the process porous so people can enter or exit. So if there's some that can benefit from coaching that may not necessarily be on the protocol, then you probably want to make room for them, as well as to leave opportunities for some people who don't want to be coached to opt out. And I would probably be more proactive and be forward leaning around the coaching. I'd want a large proportion of the workforce that is on the fence to get off the fence with an aggressive coaching approach. And I'd probably be looking and using the coaching process to look for the intrinsic connections around specific behaviors and issues and wellness issues for specific individuals. I think that more is generally better. I think it creates a value that allows people to be released into behavior change because they in fact are getting a number of messages about the issue of wellness. I'm not so much worried about the people that are on the margin. I'm worried about getting more people that are committed to actually making the change. And that's also an issue of the interaction between incentives that are used as well as norms and cultural change that's going on around a particular organization. So my approach with coaching is to say it's a good intervention. We need to market and position it well, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And we also need to use it to help get people off the fence and to identify what things are of interest to them, as well as what things are of interest in the context of maybe a long-term incentive program that's got some wellness criteria embedded in it. Second question is, what types of incentives should we use with coaching? And I think that we want to generally link coaching to wellness criteria so that you meet a criteria, one or more criteria, by being involved in an active coaching process. And you then can require at least one coaching encounter per year, which I think is a good programming strategy, to basically have everyone have some exposure to coaching and have that be around their completion of a well-being assessment and interpreting those areas. Perhaps just having the expectation that they would develop one wellness goal for themselves for the year ahead, and then to have the opportunity for the coach to help give them some supporting modalities, point them in the right direction, give them some options and alternatives to work on a specific objective. In addition, I probably would use a premium contribution reduction attached to their involvement in coaching. I'd look for those intrinsic connections, those intrinsic rationales as to why the activity or the behavior change makes sense. And I'd probably define that involvement as active engagement. So I'd want to work with that with my population. Those are the kinds of incentives that I've used with coaching that I think are the best overall incentives to use. And what you want to do is to structure the incentives to provide the extrinsic motivation for coaching, but to then take the coaching process and help people move away from the extrinsic reason to find intrinsic reasons that are relevant to them. That's the key, I think, to making the coaching really effective is to have that incentive, the extrinsic incentive in place for coaching, to have the opt-in, more forward-leaning approach, and to then be working with people in the population around their movement toward intrinsic reasons for a behavior change. Third question is, how should wellness coaching be positioned with our employees? And I would probably use the term concierge, that the wellness coaching can be kind of a concierge function. It can be seen as a benefit. It can be seen as having something like a personal trainer, where you point out that those are oftentimes $50 an hour to have someone work with you around an area, a particular area of wellness, the physical activity. So the ability to kind of position the wellness coaching in that way to help you qualify for a wellness incentive. It's there to help you use and help your own wellness goals be accomplished. So the ability for you to work on things that are relevant to you. In addition, I think what you want to be doing in terms of positioning is having calls that people can listen to on a website, so that they're MP4 files that can actually be audio files that can show them what a coaching visit would be like on a phone in a coaching contact. And then I would probably have several of them there with different kinds of things that are predominant issues for that population. They're probably going to be in weight loss, movement, sleep issues, issues around tobacco use, issues around safety practices, maybe distracted driving, okay? But you give people the opportunity to listen into the coaching call. And that's a way, I believe, to be able to provide the opportunity for people to just be the fly on the wall that's listening to a conversation between two other people about something. And that is actually a good learning strategy. It's an interest strategy to have people be able to listen to what these calls are like. That also functions as a demo. So it's a demo of what occurs in terms of that coaching encounter. So if you are positioning like we just went through, wellness concierge, personal trainer, this is a benefit, it's a service, it's a valuable service. You'd pay a lot of money for it. You can use it, to actually help accomplish some of your own objectives around health improvement and well-being. So that's how I would suggest we position the wellness coaching in order for it to be used and utilized to the highest degree by the population that you're working with. Now, you've completed this module, go ahead and take the quiz.